Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Tips Over Tea. This is a special Father's Day edition. Whether you are a father or father figure, whether you have a father or father figure in your life, or even if you did not have a father or father figure in your life, I believe you will find this episode to be informing, inspiring, potentially introspective. Either way, I'm sure you will be able to take some notes away. So make sure you get your tea and your notebook and listen in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Tips Over Tea. This is a special Father's Day edition episode, and I am so thrilled to welcome Maegan Stewart to the show. Malcolm. I'm going to leave that right there. Maegan, welcome to the
Thanks
show.
for having me, Nicole.
And so I wanted to talk to you because I loved your idea of celebrating fathers and father figures. So what would you say is some of the top things you've learned from your father figures, father in your life that you would like to share and inspire others to just think about, consider, and we'll just let the conversation go from there.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a great question because I think it's one of those topics that you could talk for a while.
Yeah.
I have a lot of men in my family. I have a lot of good, strong women in my family too. But it starts with my grandfather, and then it goes to, my uncles, and then it goes to, boyfriends, then your husband, and then just father figures throughout your life. And what I've noticed is that all the men in my life have this demeanor of, strong and just, intimidating, but then they have this soft side of them. And I think it's one of those things where you have to look at them, not at the face that they present and, their demeanor, but, getting to know these men in our lives because they have a softer side. They have a sensitive side. And I think, back in the day, they were taught to keep that close hold and don't show emotions. But when you do, it's like a beautiful thing. It's like a rare flower or something like that. So I think that's one thing that I've noticed or learned throughout my life is to not just jump into conclusions, of somebody coming at you hard. They go through emotions too. They have bad days as well. They got a lot on their shoulders. So, take them with ease and care as well.
Yeah. And plus with men being, I don't know why my words are not working today, but we're just going to keep going. With men, their way of showing love is a lot different than how women show love. And so that a lot of times, one of the things that I've learned is acts of service and protection is how they show that they care, right? If you've got a flat tire and they offer to, I mean, that's not saying that any guy who offers you help with a flat tire, they love you, but you know what I mean? Like that, that's a way that they show that they care. And that was one of the things that I kind of missed until after the fact. I was like, oh, that was the way he showed that he loved me. So if we consider that's something, just a caveat, piggyback off of how you shared that. So I appreciate that.
Definitely.
Yeah. And how about, because you've had, so your brothers, you say you grew up with brothers as well.
So I have a brother. He passed away a few years ago, but he loved his kids. And, he had a lot of trouble growing up, in his life as a child and as growing up as an adult. He had his own little challenges that he had to face. But one thing that remained consistent was the love for his children. Like he would, go to the ends of the earth for his children. My husband is the same. He has said on numerous occasions, anybody mess with his kids, it's one of those things where, boundaries are no longer established. Those are his babies.
Yeah. I've seen that with gentlemen with their children, right? they will do their best to not let anything come in between them and their kid. And we talk about Mama Bear. There's a Papa Bear.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
um, so what are some of the other things that you've noticed that we can celebrate about the men that you've grown up with and witnessed in your life that you would like
I
to?
think you said it best when you started off with father figures. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not just like your immediate father, because we all have, you know, a biological father, obviously, and we may know him and we may not know him. We may like him, we may not like him. So then there's other people in our lives, like step parents, or just uncles, grandparents, you just recognize their presence. They're showing up. They don't have to, but they came and they're giving that little tidbit of advice, or like you said, changing your flat tire, or just being present and stepping up in times of need. I think it's important to recognize, and that's what Father's Day means to me, is like all the men in my life that have in some shape or form facilitated my growth. Like we were in the 48-hour film festival movie project, and just the men on the set, were you could tell that they were good human beings. So I'm like, I can imagine how they are as fathers. I seen Trey and his kid, I seen Eric and his kids, and it's like it's a good like teacher student type of dynamic, and I
Yeah,
think I love seeing stuff like that.
yeah, me too. Me too. What would you say is one of the things that you can kind of recognize, especially if you're this for the younger population who are like still resistant
Yeah.
to that? What kind of made you? Well, let me say, when you were younger, did you recognize that like they were being the nurturing people, or did you have to like grow into like, oh, okay, because most of us will be like, I don't want to hear what you have to say. I've grown, I could do this. Well, how was that for you?
My stepfather was in my life since I was 5,
Hmm.
and I don't think I was very rebellious to
Okay.
him. He was more attentive and dropping knowledge. He was a very smart man. And then
Hmm.
my biological father, I think it wasn't rebellious. It was more of he came. We talked about this earlier. He came in a not positive light, like not his best self. And
Hmm.
so I try to create that distance from him. You
Hmm.
know, communication, it wasn't as strong as it is today.
Hmm.
Um, it was just toxic for me as a child. So I did create that distance. But then with the passing of my brother, and you know, it was just me and my brother as his kids, and I was his only child. That's when I was like, you know what, he's grieving as well, and I need to make a little bit more effort. As much as I am resistant to it, I
Hmm.
think that is that's the best way forward, is to suck up my pride and actually um, look at the bigger picture, at a man who lost his child and needs probably to lean on his other children or child a little bit more. So don't take the past and bring it into the present. Just be aware of it, remember it, and try to create new paths.
Yeah, I appreciate that because I had to do some work myself, and that's I will say one of the challenging things, and this may
Yeah.
be for youngins, and this may be for the older people who did not have the best relationship with their father or didn't have one at all. Um, Understanding that we're all doing the best that we can
Oh,
at the
yeah.
time, right? And we only know what we know when we know it. And so being able to find the humanness in the child that possibly didn't get what they needed when they
Yeah.
when they were younger, can make that that relationship a little bit gentler to each of
Yeah.
you.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I appreciate that you brought that up and thank you for sharing that. Um, so what other tips would you say, or what is something else that you could celebrate about the father figures in your life, I should say?
Tips. Let's
Or anything
see.
that you could celebrate.
Uh, I would give a tip to the dads
Okay.
and the fathers out there, and I would suggest that they open up a little bit more
Hmm.
and be their uh, most authentic self.
Hmm.
Because I feel like they have a role to play as the protector, and they're good at it, but they have to show all their sides so that I think the younger generation, a lot of people talk about how sensitive and soft they are, but I
Hmm.
think they're more aware of their emotions and their feelings, and they don't put caps on it. So I feel like fathers out there, just show your most authentic self to your children so that they can actually understand you, get to know you. And I think that would build a better and stronger relationship. Always learn and grow,
Hmm.
um, not only in life, but, amongst, the people that you love. It's a journey that does not have to be a solo journey. It could be a collective journey with your loved ones.
Yeah. I I love that. I will say I do understand that not every situation or household permits that in such a way that
Mm,
it won't change the dynamic of, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like you can't
Mhm.
unsee what you see. And
Mm,
and the unfortunate thing is it has been so deeply ingrained in us that if they show weakness, then they're weak. There
yeah.
there it has to definitely be some real straightforward communication and people have to be at a certain level to understand when that man shows any bit of weakness that they are not weak, they're just human. Right.
Right.
So that part I would say that you just have to know who you're dealing with, basically
Yeah.
who's in your home will, because for some women, I'm not gonna lie, they will lose respect for that man,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So
Mhm.
that is why they carry that weight, because that's been their previous experience. So I do love the opening up, and I agree, is just that female really needs to understand what's going on and what that's all about,
Yeah.
and that conversation. But yeah, I there are some of us that can handle it and still see him as
Yeah.
a king.
Right.
um,
It's not
mhm.
like a light switch. It's not something that you can just be like, all right, one day I'm just gonna like cry in front of, whoever.
Yeah,
It's one of those things where, like you said, you gotta kind of read the room and the situation. And then, you can actually, see where
yeah.
you're comfortable at releasing stuff. But
Mhm.
you never know unless you try a little bit. And don't
Yeah.
give it all 100.
Yeah, just put
Can't
a
be
toe in to see how the response might be.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but no, I definitely agree that at some point
yeah,
in our evolution, that could be a
exactly.
thing. It's
Mhm.
just that mindfulness and that consciousness has to
Mhm.
raise a little bit
Has to
for
be
everybody.
aligned. Yep.
Mhm. Yeah, so I love that.
What about you? What advice would you give to the dads out there?
For the ones who were not around when their kid was young, I would say have conversation with them if they are open to it.
Hmm.
So you don't have to tell all the whys, but at least tell them why they weren't there, as in, or like, I'm sorry I wasn't there like I should have been. I wanted to be, I something,
Yeah,
something. Because otherwise, we fill in the blanks with our own stories, and they are not usually the best stories. And they can either be, especially depending on the type of child. I was the type of child that everything was my fault in my mind. Like some kids, they just know it's not a me thing, that's a you thing. I find it fascinating because I was the exact opposite. So the stories that were made up in my mind were there was something wrong with me, there's like I'm not worthy or whatever. So if even though that damage is done, if y'all are able to reconnect later in life, I think it would be good to have for both of y'all to have a conversation because y'all could both accept the humanness of who you are and forgive yourselves and forgive each other for whatever, you know. So that would be one of the tips or advice I would have. Um, but yeah, also just remembering that tomorrow is never promised, and so right, the next moment is not even promised. So if if the last conversation you had with someone you I try to make it so that the last conversation I had with someone, I won't say, "Damn, that's the last thing I said to them," and they're gone, right? So, just leading from that mentality with the heart, um, for both of y'all, right? So it's not the last thing they heard, and it's not the last thing you said. That's what because we're human, we have arguments or whatever, but I'm like, if there's a way to agree to disagree and put a pin in something, like end a heated conversation, at least on a lighter note, until you can address whatever that thing is. So that's I mean, of course, that's human in general, but um, yeah, that's just what came to mind, just based on what you asked me.
Oh, that's great. I love the lead with your heart. And then conversations. I think that's like the biggest thing in life is like communication
Yeah.
with people because you're right. In any situation, we always creating these narratives,
Mhm.
and most of the time it's not accurate. So it's like, just go ahead and just put it out there.
Mhm.
And if it's received, it's received. But at least there's a foundation established of I know where you're coming from, and you know where I'm coming from. So it's definitely,
Yeah,
yeah,
that effort, that relationships take effort on both sides.
yes,
Intentional,
effort.
intentional
Yeah,
effort. Like, what's the outcome we're looking for, and how are we working to get there together?
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So that's what I have for for that. And how in the world I see we talking, probably part of it is me stumbling over my words today, but we're already at 17 minutes. Um, but
Awesome.
I appreciate your insight, your thoughts and things like that. Are there any last things that have come to mind for you before we bring on the next guest?
You are appreciated.
Absolutely. You know what, as you were saying that, that's something else. Know the guys to know their love language to help us help you, help us love you. So I know this is one more thing to keep in mind. If your love
That's
language
good.
is words of affirmation and you know that about yourself, and we're not the type of person that give words of affirmation, so you're not feeling the love. Like I was just reading a different book similar to that, but you can know that you're loved and you can feel that you're loved. It's two different things, right? And so knowing your love language would be very helpful and being open with it. It's okay. Like I'm the person in your life, they love you, they would want you to feel it as much as they feel it for you. So yeah, that was it. No, I think I'm done now. So, but thank you, Megan. I really appreciated this conversation. It was some good insights, some good tips, some good reminders, and yeah, definitely would love to have you back for a whole other topic. Who knows what?
Definitely.
Yeah, awesome. Well, for now, we are going to take a little break, and we have another guest named Eric. He'll be up next, and we'll see what he's got to say regarding Father's Day. But thank you, everyone. We'll be back in a few moments, and see you soon. All right, welcome back, everyone. We are with our second guest, Eric. Thank you for joining the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. This is our special Father's Day edition, and I reached out to a group of folks who I recently connected with and enjoyed hanging out with for a bit as we filmed a movie.
Yeah, that was
And
fun.
he volunteered to just have a conversation with me about Father's Day, celebrating fathers, some tips that you can offer for fathers. So
Yep.
let's get started there. Where do you fall on the spectrum as far as fatherhood? Are you a father-like figure? Are you a father? Are you both? Where are you at?
I am a father. I am a father of 5 young men.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's been a great experience. I'm in the empty nest stage, so
Mm-hmm.
I've done my fathering. So I'm in the transition mode of from parenting to guidance.
Mm.
Is what I like to say.
I love it. So the ages range, or are there any twins, triplets, or?
Yeah, I do have twins. I do have twins. So my oldest is 28.
Mhm.
Then I have a 24-year-old twins that are 20, will be 21 this year. And then my youngest is 18.
And they're all out of the house already.
Yeah, they are. Well, yes and no. So my oldest is out.
Mm-hmm.
The other ones are in college or working. So I do
Mm-hmm.
have Michigan State representing. They are all. I got three at Michigan State right now, going into their junior and sophomore year.
Nice, nice. So what tips would you like to share? You want to talk about the younger years or mid years, like high school, or
Ah,
start wherever, whatever you move to start with?
okay. For me, man. So I want to take it back to the beginning. Like
Yeah.
I always wanted to be a dad.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a house where I didn't have my father in the house. My mother did marry, and
Mm-hmm.
I had a stepfather. Unfortunately, he was an alcoholic. He did provide, but he did not provide the father figure thing.
Mm-hmm.
So going into it, I did not know what a real father looked like. I knew
Yeah.
what I desired. I knew what I wanted, and I think I just became that.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, early on in my I was a very active father, so I changed diapers, I did all that. I woke up in the middle of the night. My wife was a stay-at-home mom for about 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
We actually homeschooled our kids.
Nice.
So I'm with some of them. My oldest who went to school, then we pulled them out.
Mm-hmm.
My oldest finished public school, but my um, youngest four, they did homeschool up until high school,
Wow.
for the last three.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a little complicated. We had a lot going on before, but what I would say would work as a father and what I did was I was very intentional with the time I spent with him, the
Mm-hmm.
conversations that I had, and just doing stuff with him on purpose. Like we have a great relationship now. So like my boys can call me and we can talk about anything. I always tell them there's nothing that you can ever do that would ever stop me from loving you.
Yeah.
And and just period. Like I don't care what happens, I'm gonna love you regardless because that's just how dads are supposed to be. Um so but a couple of things that I did with them, like my kids, they reminisce all the time. So I said the whole spending time with them. When they were younger,
Mm-hmm.
I would take my kids out on an individual day.
Mm-hmm.
So each child had a day, whatever month, or we'll do it bi-weekly or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I would take them out and say, listen, we can do whatever you want, and you pick the activities, and we're gonna go do it.
Mm-hmm.
And we did it. Like we had fun, and they still remember those days.
I love that. A couple of things that you said. The unconditional love, like a lot of times parents, dads, they feel that, but they don't necessarily articulate that very well. So I appreciate that you verbally was like, hey, and then your actions show that too.
Yeah.
So I can appreciate that. And where did you get what spawned or inspired the idea of spending the day with each child? Because what I in my mind, I'm like, which is cool because every child is different. Even with twins, they still
Yeah.
have their own personality, and
Yeah.
they, So what inspired that pursuit?
That's exactly what inspired it because I realized that each one of my kids were different.
Mhm.
They did not. like the same things. Like you said, even the twins. My twins are total opposite. I have, I got the sporty um, guy. Then I got the laid back, chill. Ironically, both of them are in school to become doctors. But they're just totally different personalities. They still want to do the same field. They both want to go into plastic surgery or even general surgery. Um, but that was what inspired me. Like individuals. Like I wanted to get to know them on an individual basis. Like not who you are when you with your mom, or like who are you, right? And I took the time to have a conversation with them. I remember sitting across the table from one of the twins. We were at Wendy's because he was like, "Oh, I want to go to Wendy's, and I want to go to the movies." And so I was like, "Let's do that." And then I was like, "So tell me exactly what do you like, and what can I do to be a better dad?" And that was the questions that I asked. And we just had a conversation. And at that time, I want to say he was maybe 10, maybe 8, 9, 10. But it started off younger. Like when my wife would go away on the women's retreats and stuff like that. My kids love wrestling. So I would literally pull the mattress off the bed, paint our faces, and we would wrestle. You know what I mean? Like the dad stuff. Like I'm talking about hanging them over the banister. Like,
I
I
bet
would
your
put
wife
the
would have had a fit. Like,
oh man, she's like, I don't know what I don't want to know what happened. Okay,
yeah.
long as they're safe. I'm like, we good, no broken bones.
Yeah.
Um, I would also put them like in the little containers and push them down the stairs. Like they remember those things, and
Yeah.
they like, Dad was the best. I'm not tooting my own horn. This is the stuff that they've expressed to me, and so I've been, just being intentional was a real thing that I stuck to.
Yeah, and right, the parent child is still a relationship, and relationships require intentionality, right?
Yeah.
So I appreciate that you did take the time. And I also like the fact that you chose a different path from your father or your
Yeah.
stepfather, right?
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah.
that's not what I want. Where some people, they just unconsciously follow the same path. So I
Oh
appreciate
yeah.
that you were like, yeah, we're not doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, nope, nope. I will not be a deadbeat dad because I was a young dad. I
Yeah.
was a father at 17, my oldest.
Okay.
Um, and so my wife actually took in my oldest as her own, and so she's had that experience of we don't call step parenting, but a
Sure.
bonus parent. Being a bonus mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
So shout out to my wife for her being amazing in
Yeah.
that. I was a single dad, so I had my oldest son since he was 2 years old.
Mm,
And that was one of the things where I told his mom, I said, listen, I want to be involved in my son's life. I would love for him to come stay with me. We talked about it, worked it out. It
mhm,
just so happens that I was teaching at a private school. I was preschool teacher,
mhm,
ironically. And
mhm,
so he was able to go to work with me
mhm.
and go to school. So um, I was purposeful.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that is really cool. And I like that you bring that up because it kind of helps people to reflect like, where can I be more intentional? Where can I be more purposeful in my
Yeah.
relationship with my kids? What about the fact that your dad or stepdad, I want to say bonus father, but you say he wasn't really that good, so he's not really a bonus.
Back then he was stepdad. He wasn't nothing bonus about him.
Well, the bonus was it kind of gave you where you didn't want to, But what
Right.
was it? What showed up in your life that made you like, this is not how dads are supposed to be. This is not what I want for when I have kids. Like, what
Uh,
about that made you?
so man, God had put. I'm a believer. I'm a
Hmm.
Christian. So I believe that God put a couple of gentlemen in my path. So I did have my uncle.
Hmm.
My uncle Jimmy is my mother's oldest brother,
Hmm.
who was involved in my life and in a lot of different ways. Always supportive.
Hmm.
Like it was something simple as when he was working, he would call me and say, "Hey, come go to work with me," and then he would take me like roller skating every Monday or every Tuesday, or something like that. So I had that relationship. Then I watched my oldest brother. I'm the youngest of five with my mom.
Hmm.
Um, he got involved into his son's life. So I did see him and I was able to mimic that.
Hmm.
Um, and then God placed a man by the name of Stephen Joyce. He's a pastor and he became like a dad to me. Like to this day, he's like a dad. And I just watch how he was intentional with his relationship with me. You know, he would call, check up on me. We would do activities. We would go places. He spent quality time. Um, and so I had that example later on in life.
Yeah.
As I was becoming a father, as I was transitioning into dadhood, here this man was in my life, and so I was able to take some of those lessons that he taught, some of those experiences, and then applied it in a way that that translated to my kids.
That's cool that you're able to recognize, because really what could have happened is you could have seen your brother do that. You could have had the pastor go and do all that things, and you can have felt entitled, like, since my stepdad isn't around, this guy, this is what should, and instead of taking the lessons and like, hey, this is what, so I can definitely appreciate that. And so anyone, like any younger gentleman out there who may catch this episode, most of my audience is older, but if anyone younger happens to see that someone is stepping up and don't have to, I hope that they are aware enough to notice, hey, this feels good. This is what I would like to mimic or emulate in some way, shape, form.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely encourage that. If God places someone in your heart to be a part of their life, and I know it's not an easy ask, right? Because personality clashes and different things, and you never know what you have to deal with someone who may have childhood traumas. I do want to clarify that my father did come in my life, back into my life around 14. He actually was the one who taught me how to drive. So, shout out to him for that. And I I have a great relationship with him now. I had to learn that as an adult. All was forgiven. You know how things happen in life, and
Yeah.
he had his own. He had another family. He was married, have other kids, have other siblings. So that's the blessing in that. So there was no resentment or bitterness. It
Yeah.
was just the fact that my mom was amazing. She was an amazing mother. She couldn't be a mother and a father, but she was an amazing mother. And then all these other people that were a part of my life, kind of helped propel me into a better future. Because you're right, I could have allowed my situations or my circumstances to push me into a dark place, but I refused, and I was like, "Listen, I'm gonna be that rose that grows out of the concrete." I'm gonna be different. I'm not gonna repeat any generational curses.
Yeah.
And that's some of the things that I do talk to my kids about now. I'm like,
Yeah.
listen, you're going to have to apply. I want you to be a better dad, a better person. I want you to have a better career than I did. And I'm like, no one else in this world is going to want you to win more than me and your mom. And I say, outside of yourself, you need to want to win more too. But we're going to have your back regardless. So
I love that. I love that. That type of environment it opens the door for, them accepting themselves, which is huge. I was having a conversation with a gentleman friend of mine recently. He's like, especially African American man growing up without love in the home is just not a good thing.
yeah,
So I appreciate, not only did you love them and love them unconditionally, but also allow them to express themselves as whoever they are. You didn't have like, y'all need to be doing this, y'all need to look like this, and so that is one of the things about you. Go ahead.
No, I was saying because it's easy to try to get your kids to be you, right? Like I'm a filmmaker. I've been in theater and stuff, and ironically, my kids love the entertainment field, and but I didn't force that upon them. I allowed them to experience different things like sports, but I always told them education over sports, right? And even education over your leisure, whatever your fun stuff is. And then I even told my 24-year-old, he's about to be 24. I remember when he graduated high school, he wasn't sure about going to college because he wanted to play basketball. He didn't get any scholarships and so forth and so on. Then he said, I want to do YouTube. And I'm like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to support you, but you're going to have to do the leg work. You're going to have to do all this. It's not an easy task. And so he started to do it, and I would encourage him. And He fell off, and I'm like, okay, so you've had I'm gonna allow you 2 years or whatever to try to do this. If it doesn't jump off, then you have to go to your next career path. And so then he decided to go into the work field. And so, but I told him, I'm like, allow us to be the net to catch you when you fall, if when and if you fall. But we're not going to be a dependent, right? Like you dependent on us all the time. Because I'm gonna push you. I'm gonna shoot. I like to call my kids arrows because the Bible said, "Blessed is a man whose quiver is full." And I actually have 5 boys, and a full quiver is 5. So I call them arrows. And I'm like, I've already shot you guys out, right? I'm not going back. I'm not going out there to get you. And I shot you out where you land, you know. And I can support you in a way. Or like my wife is, mother bird. She pushed them out the nest. She like to say, I pushed y'all out the nest. You know what I'm saying? You flap your wings so you can fly. But it's a whole thing of allowing them to be who they are, and not trying to make them mini me's. I do have a mini me. My youngest is like me, but that wasn't intentional. It's just his personality just so happened to be like me.
That's fun. That's got to be just a beautiful thing to see, especially like you kind of crossed over. Now you get to watch them go and flourish and figure out, like, take all the lessons that you've attempted to teach them throughout the years and see what they implement, and you've instilled, it sounds like, some really good values and things like that in them, so they'll make intentional, responsible choices. So you don't have to worry, right, too much while they're out there. Like, so that's awesome.
I always told them, I said, listen, I'm raising you guys to be productive parts of society. You're going from boys to men. I don't want you, you don't have to succumb to the stereotypes that are out there.
Right.
Because people see my boys. So ironically, all of my sons have locks. And so their first reaction is to think that they're, some thug or whatever you want to stereotype they want to place on them. But they don't know that they are highly educated 4.0 students who are in college to become doctors and musicians and have jobs and, who are responsible, who are not out here in the streets trying to be whatever image that's being projected to them via television or music.
I can appreciate that. And it sounds like they know they don't have anything to prove. They just got to show up and do
That's
it.
right.
Because they know who they are.
Yeah, exactly.
You afforded that. You created an environment for that to flourish like that. And that's so important.
Absolutely. And you also, as a dad, you have to allow for mistakes.
Yeah.
All right. And I think a lot of times I've had a conversation with my sister, and I'm like, you can't control them, right? You can point them in a direction, and you can't force them to go in that direction. You have to allow them to. Some people learn through their own mistakes. Some people learn. I always tell them, I done made all the mistakes, so you don't have to make them. But one of my kids in particular is a very experiential learner, right? So he like, I gotta touch the fire to know it's hot. And I'm like, okay, well, you're gonna get burned. I already been burnt, but you don't have to. You know what I'm saying? So it is in essence, you just have to allow them to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And so I've told them, you know, one of the things that I emphasize over and over, because you have to have a conversation. You can't just have a conversation one time. You got to have it constantly. Like every time I get in the car when I'm driving. And I'm like, I know you're tired of hearing me say this. And they're like, no, Dad, actually, I'm glad you're telling me this. It's a reminder of, whatever. And I'm like, you never have to lie to me about anything. Because, again, there's nothing you can do. I know the heart of man, right? I know how people think. I know, according to what I believe, my Bible says we all are sinners. We all make mistakes. We all fail, right? But the object is not to stay down, it's to get back up and get back in line. And you know what I mean? So and I'm like, I can't help you if you're hiding the truth from me, right? And I'm like, and I learned how I'm a grace giver. So amongst my friend group, amongst people, I give grace to people. And sometimes it's to my detriment, but I just believe that because I want people to do that to me. If I'm not perfect, I'm going to make mistakes. So I need your grace. I need your forgiveness. So that's just some of the things that I just try to reiterate with them over and over, having that conversation. given grace. I've had to apologize to my kids. I
Mm,
know that I had this standard and I messed it up. So,
mm,
son, I'm sorry. I
mm.
messed up. Forgive me. Let's get back in, good
Yeah,
graces.
yeah. You know, it's something that came to mind too when you were talking about allowing them to mess up and learn however they learn. Um, Not tying that to you being a bad parent.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's not what that means. That's
Yeah.
allowing that's allowing for the way they need to develop and grow. So
Oh,
you still
oh,
got the
man.
net there.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? And I learned that lesson. I wish it was my own, but I learned that lesson from a good friend of mine's. I remember I was helping him paint his basement,
Hmm.
and at the time he was homeschooling his daughter,
Hmm.
and so I didn't know anything about homeschooling. This before I was doing mine because they were the ones who actually encouraged us to
Hmm.
and showed us how to homeschool.
Hmm.
But in my mind, I always thought homeschool kids were like these weird, you
Hmm.
know unsocialized kids and
Yeah.
and then they grow up and go crazy. So I
Probably
said to
back
him,
in
like,
the day.
yeah,
But nowadays
exactly.
we have like different
Yeah,
programs for homeschool parents, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That was my experience, and that
Yeah.
was 20 years ago,
Yeah.
right? So and so we were talking, and then I said, so what would you do if your daughter grows up, goes off to college, and becomes buck wild? Like, she messing with all these guys because these guys have sheltered her. And he
Hmm.
looked me dead in my face and said, "Let me tell you one thing." He said, "I've done the best that I could as a father. And when she gets older and old enough to make her own decisions, those are her decisions. Her
Hmm.
decisions are not a result of me failing as a parent because I know what I have implemented. I know all the things that I've taught her."
Hmm.
And I was like, dang, it was so freeing.
Yeah.
It was like, I was like, okay, so like, I just be the dad I can be, the best dad I can be.
Yeah.
And however, there's no such thing as a perfect parenting,
Yeah.
right? Like, we gonna make mistakes, we gonna mess up.
Hmm.
But I had a good foundation,
Hmm.
and I just took little small lessons from people here and there, man. And I look at my kids, and I'm a proud dad. I am. I am.
It sounds like you should be.
Yeah, they some knuckleheads. You know what I'm saying? Like they can get into on your nerves and all that good stuff. But I mean, they are still amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
people who meet them like, oh, your kid, those are your kids. Oh, you're blessed. I was literally over one of their teachers' house, their former teacher's house.
Uh-huh.
This is how they've impacted. When they went to high school, were part of the musical theater program,
Mhm.
and they made it cool.
Mhm.
So, and it's funny because I went to one of the shows. They since graduated, but I still support because the teacher was just amazing.
Yeah.
But one of the parents was introducing me to another parent and was like, "Hey, this is the Jones boys' dad. He's responsible. His kids are responsible for my son being a part of this program. They made musical theater cool." And I was just like, when my chest all the way out, man,
Yeah.
like, wow, like this is the impact that they've left. They've been gone for a year and 2 years now
Mhm.
from the program, but their legacy
Yeah.
still lingers,
That's really
and
cool.
and it's just amazing.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
love it. Proud
yeah, yeah.
dad. Rightfully
I
so.
am. Thank you. I am. I am.
Any last minute shares that come to mind before we close out this episode?
Oh man, just the only other thing I can do is say love them while they're young and
Mm-hmm.
cherish those moments because they grow up so fast. But also be prepared for the transition that you go from parenting to guidance.
Hmm.
And that's where I am now, and I'm just celebrating. I'm like, I ain't your best friend. I ain't one of your little friends
Don't get
still.
it twisted.
Don't get it twisted. I'm still dad. But you don't need, I don't really have to say that
Yeah, I know.
because, what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
the respect is given because
Yeah.
the respect was earned, and it goes two ways.
Yeah.
But I would say as you each transition, so from baby to toddlers, from toddlers to preteens,
Mhm.
teenagers to young adults. And I told them ain't none of them grown until they off on their own and can take care of themselves. So I only got one grown son. He off on his own. The rest of them are still young adults. But embrace it. Embrace the change and be purposeful and intentional with your kids.
I love that. Thank you so much, Eric.
Thank
Great,
you.
Great tips. Great reason to celebrate Father's Day this coming weekend.
Yes. Yes. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers who are listening.
Yes. Fathers and father figures too.
Yes. Father and father figures. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you for sharing that. Congratulations to you, your family too. Just like you gave us 5 beautiful human beings, leaders, future leaders, and wherever they decide to go. So awesome. Thank you again for your time.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you everyone for joining the show. I hope you got a lot of good tips and encouragement, inspiration from both of the guests for this episode. And stay tuned. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, and we'll see you next time. Ciao for now. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Hope you enjoyed the show and got a lot of good information. Be sure to like, subscribe, tap the bell so you know when we air again. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Enjoy the rest of your week.